Tonight, on Legislative Review. Democratic budget leaders roll out a new tax package proposed to help cover the state's budget deficit. You're watching Legislative Review. Thank you for watching Legislative Review. I'm Angela Nolasco with today's top discussions in the state legislature. As the clock ticks down to the 2025 legislative deadline, lawmakers grapple with a state budget deficit now estimated to be between $12 billion and $16 billion. Democratic budget leaders in both the House and Senate just rolled out a major package of tax proposals, some of which members of the Senate Ways and Means Committee discussed late Wednesday. Here's what they are in a nutshell. First is one that brings one of the state's most hotly debated financial policies back in the spotlight, the capital gains tax. Senate Bill 5813, or the Capital Gains and Estate Tax, is a new bill that would raise taxes on profits over $1 million, like from selling stocks, by nearly 3%. Passed in 2022, the capital gains tax was designed so that its first $500 million in profits goes to education and early learning each year. The estate tax, which kicks in when someone passes away and leaves behind assets, would also get a major revamp under this bill. Estates under $3 million would pay less, but those over $12 million could see a top rate of 35%. Testifying in favor of the bill, Kristen Ang of Faith Action Network.
Senate Bill 5813 responsibly builds on Washington's capital gains excise tax by creating a new 9.9% tier for extraordinary gains over $1 million, affecting only a few thousand taxpayers. At a time when many families, are struggling with the cost of living, affordable childcare, and underfunded schools, this proposal helps ensure the wealthiest contribute their fair share.
Speaking in opposition, concerned citizen Stephen Boyd.
This bill is going to have a 75% increase in our top rate of estate taxes and a 41% increase on long-term capital gains above $1 million. If it becomes law, business owners who wish to start businesses here, especially in the tech sector, will simply choose to leave. It's bad policy because it's too easy to avoid.
Next, a proposed property tax to fund schools. Senate Bill 5812, also known as House Bill 2049, would let local governments raise property taxes by up to 3% a year, instead of the current 1%. The bill would increase the per-pupil funding limit for local school districts, and they'd be allowed to collect an additional $500 per student adjusted to inflation. Speaking in favor of the bill, Candace Bach of the Association of Washington Cities.
The cost of providing critical services in our communities is growing at much faster than 1%. It's difficult to keep up with the cost for police, fire, transportation, parks, with the 1% limit. It's created a structural deficit that has made it difficult for communities to provide those services. This bill represents a modest increase in that cap. It really replaces that outdated cap with something that's more tied to realistic numbers and creates really a local option. This does not mandate an increase, but allows locally elected officials to make the decisions that work best for their community to meet those community needs.
Expressing his opposition, Anthony Mixer of Washington State Young Republicans.
Quite frankly, I'm getting sick and tired of coming to tell you all that we oppose increases to property taxes, and so are so many other taxpayers across this state. If 43,000 taxpayers signed in opposed to Senate Bill 5798 isn't enough, what is enough to tell you all we said no? On this bill, 276 signed in pro, but 7,849 signed in con, a 97-3% ratio in taxpayers' favor. My generation is finding it harder to achieve the American dream of affording a home in this state. Lack of housing supply is leading to increased home prices, and for those of my generation that do have a home, increasing these taxes will strain them. Think about the seniors on fixed incomes as well. This bill is about pricing people out of their homes. Please constrain your addiction for more of our money. The taxpayers have widely said that they would rather you make cuts and not increase taxes.
Senate Bill 5811, also known as House Bill 2077, proposes a tax on zero-emission vehicle credits. These are aimed at car companies that make money off of electric vehicle credits, like Tesla, with a tax rate of 2% for ZEV credits sold and 10% for banked credits, including both credits banked after the effective date and credits banked before the effective date that continue to be banked. For credits pooled after the effective date of this bill, the tax rate depends on the model year and the manufacturer's ZEV delivery rate in Washington, compared to other states with similar ZEV programs. The base tax is 10%. No one publicly testified in favor of the bill, speaking against it and on behalf of the Washington Policy Center, Todd Myers.
Rather than rewarding the most innovative EV makers, this legislation increases costs and makes the state's EV mandate more unstable. The existing EV mandate does nothing to reduce CO2 emissions above the state's existing CO2 cap. This bill would simply make an already expensive system even more expensive, and for no other reason than to punish Tesla, a company who did exactly what the legislature claimed it wanted, increase the sales of electric vehicles, but is now perceived as a political opponent.
Lawmakers say this new tax could bring in $280 million over 4 years, with most going to the state and some supporting EV incentives. Senate Bill 5814 would tax all nicotine products, including nicotine pouches, at 95% of the sales price. And, for the first time, services like IT support, staffing agencies, and security would be taxed, raising over $5 billion in revenue. The biggest piece of the pie would come from taxes applied to computer and IT-related services, temporary staffing agencies, security services, services such as data processing, and certain kinds of advertising. Sharing his strong opposition, initiative activist Tim Eyman.
Businesses do not pay taxes, their customers do. So if you're going to be increasing the taxes on service businesses, that means higher prices for the services to the customers that they're servicing. Same thing with property taxes. When businesses pay property taxes, they're going to pass it on to the renters. Same thing with business taxes in 5815. It is just maddening to me to see how disingenuous it is when you're promoting this, that we're just going to whack the businesses, when the businesses are never going to eat this. They're going to pass it on to their customers, and the taxpayers are struggling enough as it is.
While taking a neutral stance on the bill, Audrey Miller Garcia of the American Cancer Society shared her concerns.
It would impose an excise tax on FDA-approved cessation medications, including products like Nicorette gum, and it does not tax synthetic nicotine products at parity with other tobacco products.
No one publicly testified to support the bill. If enacted, businesses might also have to prepay a month's worth of sales tax to help cover a future budget gap. And finally, the state's business tax system could see its biggest changes in years, with Senate Bill 5815, which proposes to modify the business and occupation tax, where, if passed, big companies making over $250 million a year would pay more. Many small to mid-sized service businesses would also see higher tax rates starting in 2027. Speaking in favor of the bill, Claire Lane of the Anti-Hunger Nutrition Coalition.
Washington has the second most regressive tax system and is far from the top states for state and local taxes. I'm originally from Illinois, I would know. This version of the B&O closes certain loopholes and raises rates on businesses that bring in significant money. These adjustments make the B&O more progressive. More importantly, the revenue from these changes help pay for important services and programs and opportunities, especially things like higher education that provide an opportunity and create pathways out of poverty.
Speaking to oppose certain parts of the bill, Greg Hannon of the Western States Petroleum Association.
Policies that increase the cost of gas for working families should not be one of them. The surcharge in Section 201 represents a 100% increase in the wholesaling and the retailing rate of fuel not manufactured in the state of Washington. As you have with other refinements to this bill, please consider exempting wholesale and retail fuel transactions from the scope of the legislation. And as you evaluate this request, please also consider the totality of taxes, fees, and policies already imposed on fuel.
While Democrats push for new taxes, minority Republicans say the state has a spending problem and that raising taxes would put Washington's financial stability at risk. They believe in spending cuts to address the deficit without raising taxes. That's it for this episode of Legislative Review. Make sure to join us nightly at 8 and 11 for your highlights in the state legislature. And follow us on social media. Have a good night.